broken the non-reading curse? Will she ever break the curse of other people's barking dogs when she's trying to film? I think no is the answer to at least one of those. This was not the energy that I was hoping for in 2020. Hi guys, it's Leanne, and I actually haven't been punched in the face. It's just my stress reaction to, you know, this whole year. I mean, we wouldn't want life to be easy, would we? Where would be the heroic fantasy arc if life was easy? I took a little break for health and mental health, and so that I could actually relearn how to read. About a month ago, I did a video which was like my pile of shame books that I had started and not finished. Reading felt like something that I distantly remembered how to do but couldn't quite reach, and it turns out that a lot of you felt exactly the same. So I thought that for my first video back, I should be completely honest with you guys and let you know whether I have finally beaten the abandoned book pile, whether I have, you know, dug myself out of a hole of my own creation. And it turns out the answer to that is kind of yes and kind of no, not really. I'll start with the good news. The good news is I'm reading again. I'm reading regularly and I'm enjoying what I'm reading, and that is why I'm back. I'm back here to tell you about all of the things that I am reading and all of the things that I have bought, and about the 200 books that I have weeded from my shelves. Because it turns out, ladies, gentlemen, and friends of a non-binary nature, that the best thing to do when you're not reading is to look at your bookshelves with an intensely critical eye and to throw many things out. Maybe have I got this patch of eczema under my chin. Maybe it was too much thinking. Let's return to the most advanced books that were on the abandoned book stack and assess which ones I have actually managed to, you know, shepherd towards completion. The one that most of you wanted to know about was the family... Did I say that right? I almost said it right! One of these days, I will stop picking up this book and trying to say the title of The Upstairs Family, which is a different book entirely. And yes, Leanne's heart does want Kate Murray Brown to write 10 more books. And yes, Leanne's heart does just want to reread this book. Most of you wanted to know about The Family Upstairs by Lisa Jo, which is a creepy sort of psychological thriller come maybe kind of horror novel about an abandoned baby who's found in a deserted house in the 70s after a very affluent family commits a suicide pact, or so it seems. And we follow this baby many years later when she discovers that she owns this house that she knew nothing about, and she has to decide what to do with it. But all is not as it seems. This is a fabulous book. I love it. On my abandoned book pile, I said that I was halfway through it. I can now tell you that I am 2/3 of the way through it, which is over half, right? So that's better. That's better than it was before. That's excellent progress. Because my brain is still in that stupid weird place where I don't want this book to be over, and so I'm making it not be over by just not reading it. And it's dumb, and just shut up. I know it's dumb. Let's just move on. Oddly enough, the book that my brain decided that I could finish from the abandoned book stack was a book that I didn't really care for all that much, and that was The Murders at White House Farm by Carol Ann Lee. I knew it! I second guessed myself. She rusty, bitches, she rusty. The Murders at White House Farm is a true crime non-fiction book about some very famous murders that happened in the 80s in England. They surround the Bamber family and Jeremy Bamber, who is pictured on the cover for reasons. This book follows the Bamber family all the way through its family tree, and in fact that was one of my biggest issues with it, is that Carol Ann Lee has chosen to start the nature-nurture argument portion of this narrative literally in the 1800s. It was a choice, guys, and it was a choice that just didn't work for me. I think it would have been much more interesting had she laid out the facts of the actual case, if we had perhaps started with the night of the murders and then worked backwards when I was already emotionally invested in these people. A lot of it thankfully follows Jeremy's sister, who had a lot of mental health problems, and I have to say that I found that to be really well represented. The kind of treatments that she received at the time, which are very outdated for what we would do for some of those conditions now, were really interesting to read about. The sort of constant struggle to be seen as a whole person despite her mental health battles, though, that was great. I loved that. I would have just been happy with that. But unfortunately in the last third of the book we kind of get to know Jeremy a little bit more, because Carol Ann Lee had a lot of correspondence with him, and it's very much this like mystique about this killer and the person who he wants to portray himself as, and I just don't care. If I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. I want to hear about the victims, I want to hear about the impact on the families, I want to hear about the impact on the community. I don't want to hear about how the murderer feels about their murders. I'm not saying that we shouldn't look into how they got there in the first place, or necessarily what they have to say about why they did it, but I don't want to know anything after that. I don't care. It's not useful to me. I don't want it. Now you guys will probably remember that one of the ways that I tried to get myself out of this weird bookish rut that I found myself in was to dip my toe into worlds that I already knew really, really well, with casts of characters that felt like friends and family, where I didn't have to do a lot of legwork in the mental energy department to figure out what was going on. One of the ways that I tried to do that was by picking up False Value, which is the latest Peter Grant novel, but I just couldn't make myself pick it up without starting at the beginning again. That was what my brain really wanted to do. It really wanted to go back to the start of the series, where I felt cozy and I kind of knew what was going to happen, and it was like my brain was trying to find a fictional comfort blanket. But I'm sorry brain, we're not going back to the start of like a 10-book series right now. We're not doing that. It all went really badly, and then one night I was sitting there sketching and my brain just suddenly went, I want to listen to Illuminate. You guys know that this is one of my favourite series in the world. I will never stop talking about the Illuminate files. I literally push them at anybody who will listen to me for more than 5 minutes, because definitely takes more than 5 minutes for me to talk about these books. I have read them multiple times, and the audiobooks are phenomenal. They are full cast audio, they have sound effects, and there is a particularly creepy bit I have discovered about 2/3 of the way through, when it's very dark on a spaceship and one person's on their own and there's a creepy freaking voice, and it turns out you shouldn't listen to that audiobook at 3 AM. Just take this as a tip from me to you. I've done that bad thing, so you don't have to do it. And so I threw myself into Illuminate. I didn't just read it. I stopped watching TV, I stopped consuming any other media, I stopped listening to music, which has really been my go-to during all of this craziness for background noise, and I let myself enjoy the characters and the world that I love so much, and it was such a good move. The reason that I think it took my brain until Illuminate to allow me to really properly enjoy rereading a book is because a lot of this weird reading rut that I found myself in was related to guilt. I felt guilty that I wasn't reading, I felt guilty that I wasn't picking up the new books on my shelf, I felt guilty that I wasn't able to finish anything and to actually talk to you guys about what I was reading. It's such a fundamental part of my life. It's like my instinct now when I pick up a book is to also pick up the camera, and I ended up in just this guilt bubble where everything was bad and wrong and I wasn't doing enough and I wasn't enough and it was just terrible. But that is anxiety brain for you. That's exactly what it does. It tells you that you're a bad person even when you're not. So it was particularly distressing to me that that happened, and then it was particularly amazing when Illuminate was the thing that got me out of that weird horrible rut. Now, I'm not going to talk about every single book that I mentioned in the abandoned books video, because otherwise this would be very lengthy, and I'm still progressing or DNFing as I go. Don't worry, the pile has not gone away. But I have moved on, and I think that was one of the most freeing things of this experience, was telling you guys all about the books that I had kind of just abandoned and littered about my house, and then giving myself permission to just literally kick them into a pile in the corner and move on. So when I finally got over myself and decided I was going to read exactly what I wanted to read, a buddy read just fell into my lap. The wonderful Simone from Me, Simone and I, who I think I have mentioned more since January than any other person in the entire world, let alone on BookTube, gifted me with Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and she did it just because it was a book that she was excited about and she wanted to read. And then as soon as she sent it to me, she was like, do you know what, do you know what, do you know what? Let's read it with Victoria, from what Victoria read, because she had also sent it to Victoria as a gift, and so we all had it, and so let's just do the booktuber thing. And it was absolutely delightful. I started reading this in the physical copy, and then I heard that the audiobook was a cast audio, which, as you can probably tell by this point in the video, I'm a bit of a sucker for a cast audio. I do like a good cast. And so I read them in tandem, and I just, if you are an audiobook fan, I so advocate picking this one up because it added so many layers to it for me. I was so delightfully surprised by this book. And I say delightfully surprised because I was really worried when I first got it. I ain't gonna lie, I was really worried about it. First of all, this is definitely a book that has done the rounds. So many people were excited for the new release from Taylor Jenkins Reid, like so many people, and I just, you know how I feel about hype books, like, you know, even on the best of days you know how I feel about them, let alone coming out of this weird reading rut thing. But also, it's a music narrative, which has never been my thing, and yet somehow it was a perfect book. In case you've somehow missed the premise of this, it is about Daisy Jones, who is a rock and folk singer who meets a band called The Six in the 70s, and they form a group. And it is about their meteoric rise to fame and then their massive breakup. The only time that I pick up literary fiction anymore, like the only time, is if I hear that it's a brilliant character study, and that is exactly what this book is. Don't get me wrong, there is talk of rock and roll, there's talk of producers, there's talk about songs, but this book never tries to do the thing that I hate in musical narratives, where it tries to explain the music to you. We do get lyrics, and we're told that songs are, you know, up-tempo or they're ballads, and we're told how they make people feel, but they never try to sell the music to you so that you are artificially being made to feel something that you normally wouldn't, because you can't hear it, because it was kind of like the music was just a vehicle to get these people together. It's really difficult to talk about any plot details about this book without giving anything away, because it fundamentally is a character study about this group of people, how they were thrown together, what sparks flew, who didn't get on. It really is that. So what I will say is that the things that I loved about this was, once again, the dialogue felt so completely genuine. This book is told entirely in interviews. There are little sections at the start of chapters where we'll be told exactly when this is set and what's happening to the band at the time, but then everything is in interviews from each of the characters, and every person's point of view adds a different layer, because of course nobody is completely a reliable narrator in the story of their own life. At the heart of this novel there was a relationship which was so incredibly refreshing to me that I couldn't quite believe that I was reading it on the page and that it was set in the 70s. Like, it was an attitude towards a relationship that I could see easily being set now, where we look at the idea of monogamy and trust and things a lot differently in an individual way. But to see that attitude set in a novel in the 70s is one of my favourite time periods to read about. I loved it. It was great. So to round out this video, let's talk about what I'm reading now, what I'm going forward with into the next video, which is all of that big haul that I'm using to fill all of the gaps that I made in my shelves. Don't worry, the unhaul's coming too. You guys know I love throwing books across the room. I was not going to deprive you of that. One of the things that's been working for me is just letting my brain pick exactly what it wants to read completely at random. Sometimes that's new books that make their way in, sometimes it's a backlist title, but the thing that's working for me right now is just letting my brain be random. Which is ironic because I'm desperate to make it get back to doing stacks so I can do stack at TBRs at the start of every month because I love them, but it's just, I'm not there yet. I'm getting there, I'm not there yet. So the random book that my brain decided it wanted to pick up was in fact a new book that came into my house, and it is no, it is not. It is The Places I've Cried in Public by Holly Bourne. Can we just say that this cover is absolutely stunning? I love the running rain. It just makes me happy. It's all tactile. Also has sprayed edges. I'm just saying. Okay, I'll shut up. I'll shut up about the book now. I'll just tell you what it's about. This is about Amelie, a girl who considers herself to be a perfectly normal girl who fell for a perfectly normal boy. Except that perfectly normal boy has made her cry in just about all of the places that they have ever gone together. And she is now trying to, after their relationship has broken up, piece together both herself and her memory of this relationship to find out where it went wrong by going to all of the places one by one that this boy made her cry. The tagline that I love on the back is, "It looked like love, it felt like love, but this isn't a love story," and I'm so excited for that. I'm so excited to see a story which is set at a formative part of our lives, which is not about like a happy clappy soulmate romance. I'm so enjoying seeing different versions of relationships be portrayed right now in YA, and just yes please. And in a slightly less odd turn of events for my brain, the next book that I am just about to pick up is one that I'm just so excited for. This is one of those thriller authors that I have somehow ended up with their entire backlist on my shelves and their latest book on my haul stack without having read a single one of them. In general, that's something that I'm trying not to do anymore. I'm trying not to buy full series of books before I enjoy them. I'm trying not to buy whole authors' backlists just because they sound good, because we've all been tempted to do that, right? But it doesn't always work out for me. Sometimes it does. That's how I found my beloved Liam Moriarty, but sometimes it really does not. But this author is someone who I have had so many recommendations to read from so many of my thriller buddies, so many of my thriller and mystery queens who have given me some wonderful recommendations in the past. This is a name that keeps coming up again and again, and it is of course Gillian McAllister. The one that I've decided to start with is one right in the middle of her backlist, so I think this is like the third of 6 novels, and this is Anything You Do Say. I hauled this a while ago and I remember talking about it on the channel because I remember the reaction that I got from people like, "Oh my god, that sounds like such a creepy story, I want to read this." So if you have read it, of course I want to hear about it. But I decided on this one because when I was reading through all of the blurbs on my shelf, I was like, yeah, that's the one that got me. That's the one that really got me. This is about Joanna, who is walking home one night from a club and she is alone, it's dark, and she hears footsteps behind her. What she realises very quickly is that these footsteps are keeping pace with her, so when she speeds up, so do they, and she panics and turns around to confront the person who is following her. But then she makes a snap decision and she pushes that person and they fall and hit their head. And then there's this bit that I absolutely love on the bottom of the back of the book where it says, "Now what? Call 999, wait for the police to arrive, for judgment, for justice, whatever that may be. You just hope your husband, family and friends, everyone you love will stand by you. Or run. Stay silent. You didn't mean to do it. You were scared, you panicked, and no one saw. No one will ever know. If you leave now, if you keep quiet, forever. Which is it to be?" And this is a novel that is told from those two different points of view, alternating what happens if you did it, what happens if you didn't do it. And I'm so excited. I love slipstream novels. I love novels that play with time and different theories like this. I'm just so excited. So that's it, guys. Those are all of the books that I've recently read or am reading right now. I am so happy to be reading again. It feels like I had one of my arms cut off and it's just kind of been stitched back on, and I'm sort of getting the feeling back very slowly, but I'm getting there. So if you were one of the people who told me on my abandoned book stack video that you were struggling with reading too, or that you had completely stopped reading during all of the craziness of 2020, please tell me how you're getting on. I want to know, have you been able to pick up books again? Have you been able to get back to reading? And if you haven't, what have you been doing instead? Was it what I was doing, which was just kind of looking at my shelves and auditing them? I love to audit shelves. I've now kind of re-entered my relationship with Goodreads too. Slowly we're getting there. It's complicated. And as always, of course, if you have read any of the books that I have talked about today, I want to hear about that too in the comments. So keep your eyes peeled. Like I said, it's going to be a haul. It's going to be really big on haul. And then there's going to be some other stuff. As back, guys. Did you miss me? I missed you. Okay, goodbye. Should edit this video immediately, but it's New Villager Day on Animal Crossing, guys. I may be sometime.